Welcome to the Triskele Podcast.
We're three Druids gathered in a virtual grove
to share our thoughts and our path with you.
Welcome to this inaugural episode of the Triskele Podcast. We are thrilled to have you here. It's going to be a little crazy. It's our first time. We're going to try and make this work. Let's start introducing ourselves. My name is Victoria. I am a Druid currently primarily in nDraiocht Fein, but I am also a member of the Order of Bards, Ovates, and Druids. Amber or Drum?
My name is Amber. I am also a member of ADF. I'm a member of OBOD. I'm also a member of Hellenion, which is a Greek organization. So I tend to wear lots of hats and be in many organizations.
Hi, I'm Drum. I'm a Druid. I'm a member of nDraiocht Fein for a long time, a little over 30 years. Actually, a lot over 30 years. But I'm also a member of OBOD, a Druid grade member. I'm very happy to be part of OBOD. And I'm also a member of RDNA, the Reformed Druids of North America.
I guess I did forget that one. Oops. So in this first podcast, we thought that we would talk about who we are and where we came from and how we got to where we are on our path. So I'm going to ask Amber to kick that off.
So for me, getting to ADF started at a very young age. I actually am one of those weird people who kind of stumbled into paganism. Greek mythology and those types of things always really interested me. But in high school, I started doing a research paper on the Salem witch trials and realized, oh, that still happens. And it kind of led me on this journey that it took years to find an organization that I fit into. My partner actually had joined OBOD, and we were broke college students, and there was no way we could afford 2 OBOD memberships at that time. So I literally Googled cheap alternatives to OBOD, and it led me to ADF. So I've been a member of ADF for 13 years now. It's my spiritual home. It's an organization that I love, and I'm really proud to be a part of it. So it's a very quick summary. That's how I got to where I am.
Cool. Drum?
I found paganism kind of indirectly. I didn't know it was called that. When I was in grade 8, we studied Greek religion, Edith Hamilton's Mythology. And I fell in love with the gods because they're real and they were alive. And we had a test, and one of the questions in the test was, are the Greek gods still worshipped today? And I said yes, because that made perfect sense to me, and I got that question wrong. So I decided to do something about that locally in my own life. And I started looking into the gods and working with them. Aeolus, the god of the winds, was the first god that I worked with in my first working in the last century, I'll just say, or the last millennia. And it really stuck with me. I've always loved the Greek gods. And so a little while later, I came across Drawing Down the Moon by Margaret Adler. And I found that there were other people in there just like me. And there was a section on the new Reformed Druids of North America that really appealed to me. And that started me on my path of Druidry, and that directly led me to ADF. So here I am many years later. I love ADF. It is my spiritual home. I love Druidry because I think it is my home among the trees and among the Earth Mother.
My path was a little more winding. I grew up talking with fairies in the yard with my best friend. And then I guess I was about 15. And I started realizing that there were people who actually believed what I believed, that the gods were real, that the fae existed, that the river had a spirit, and started trying to figure out which way it went. I went through Wicca, not for me. Tried some traditional witchcraft, a little bit better, not quite there yet. Spent many, many years floating around in sort of nothing specific. And I don't even remember what made me look up Druidry. I decided one time, I was like, all right, let me try this Druid thing, see how that works. And I joined ADF and OBOD on the same day and have been working through the programs on both of them. And I love the way they complement each other and their different perspectives on our Druidry. And so I've stuck with both of them, and most of my studies right now are focused on ADF, but that sort of flows back and forth depending on where I am and what I'm focusing on at that moment. So here I am. And then we decided to do a podcast.
It happens.
It was kind of random how we decided to do a podcast, I have to say.
Well, it was a nice way to get together, especially now that most of our get-togethers are virtual. We thought it was a nice way to spend some time with each other and with yourselves.
Well, we already have a lot of conversations where we compare and contrast our experiences and share what we're working on and what it is we're doing. So I'm going to record it and share with other people.
That's
Worst
true.
thing that's going to happen is my mouth. I mean, that's for your
Hey, nothing bad comes out of your mouth, so it's fine. At least not where we can record it.
Exactly.
Also, you're editing this, so we're safe.
Exactly. I can even edit that out. Hey, look at
You
that.
could.
So one of the things that actually really drew me into ADF when I first joined, I loved the idea of Druidry. But like Drum, I started with the Greek pantheon. And so this idea of Druidry that I had in my head was that it was this Celtic thing. And I didn't connect with those deities. So I was trying to build a practice of my own that used Greek gods and did Druid worship. And so when I found ADF and realized, holy cow, I can do that together and that's okay, that's kind of for me what solidified, okay, this is where I should at least start. And since then I've explored a lot of different pantheons, but for me that was definitely a door opener for what we're doing in ADF.
Yeah, I started working with the Welsh gods. I've worked with Caragwen for, I don't know, before I knew she was Caragwen. And so that was an easy transition into both OBOD and ADF. And then as I got more into my practice, I realized that I also really associated with a lot of the Anglo-Saxon and the Norse gods. And so working with Freya and Frigga and those gods, and I love the fact that I didn't have to change my spiritual practice or try to do something outside of it, and like have multiple paths in parallel or anything. It could all just work together. And so that, for me, I thought that was really, really cool.
Yeah, I was really drawn to the Greek gods, and because they seem to feel and look kind of like me. I mean, they're very human. Early on, I spent some time looking at the Egyptian gods, and while I was fascinated with the power and the majesty and the magic of them, they're very different, very non-anthropomorphic, and I had that was just a little bit of an adjustment for me. And I found a mentor who had me work with Irish gods, and it was a challenge for me because I'm not Irish, but it's really the gods call to you. And they really don't look at nationalities. I think they look at you, and you look at them. And it was that's how I found the Irish gods, and it's a pantheon that I've worked with for a very long time. And like Amber, I've worked with other pantheons. I've worked with the Hittites. I find them fascinating. Oh my goodness! And I've recently started working with the Greek gods again, and I'm drawn in. Oh my goodness, like a moth of the flame. It's like I'm home again. It's old home week.
I feel like I should resist the Greek god thing, and yet
Don't do it. Come to the fire.
No matter how hard you try, they will get you.
Well, I mean, they were the first mythology that I really studied, right? Because that's the mythology that we all study in school. And
Absolutely.
So I am familiar with many of them. I have some interesting experiences with some of them, but that may be the subject for a different podcast. Right now, though, I'm really trying to work a lot more with the Welsh deities and understanding that pantheon. I find it really interesting to work with the more Celtic cultures, so the Welsh, the Irish, the Scottish, because in those cultures, they're not really defined as gods. Right? They're just defined as these amazingly cool people. And there's hints in the language that says that they're gods. Brand when is believed to be, no guarantees, a signifier of deity. And so we're kind of guessing on some of these. So are they gods? Are they ancestor heroes? Are they what? Where does this fit? And I know for me, I sort of have come to the conclusion that it doesn't matter. Spirits are spirits, and they're just different power levels of spirits. And cool, that works for me. It's different for everybody, though. So, I know people who work within ADF who are agnostic. They work with the gods as if they are archetypes: brain, tired, long day, and it works for them. And they can function just fine with the rest of us who act as if gods are individuals. And then there are people who are sort of everything in between. And we can still all get together and all worship together and all really join in community in our rites and find common ground. And in most organizations, in many organizations, that is the thing that really draws people together, is that ability to have something in common that pulls us all together.
That ability to relate.
Yeah.
That's what humans want. We want to connect with each other, and we want to connect with the world around us. And within ADF, that's it's that orthopraxy, that shared practice that we do. It doesn't matter if some are agnostic and some are hard polytheist, and ultimately they're all compatible because we share a practice and not necessarily share beliefs.
And I think the lore has a lot to do with that, because it's not the lore that we look to are stories. They're not really books of the law. They are
right.
books of stories, and so we are drawn to common experiences in those stories because across an Indo-European spectrum, many of those topics are revered and reviewed on and on because they're shared human experiences.
So something that came up in one of my Discord chats that I'm in is that idea of an Indo-European culture, and the fact that the mythology. So for the people who aren't in ADF and don't know what we're talking about when we say Indo-European, what we're talking about is a collection of languages that, as far as we can tell, come from a common source. And the mythology seems to, and I'm using all these caveats because none of us were there, we don't actually know for sure, but it looks like the mythology sort of went with the people as they moved through the worlds. And, or as they moved through the world. We have not yet managed to get off of this planet. And there's a lot of commonalities between these cultures that are designated by language. And those commonalities seem to be commonalities in practice as well. Like fire is a super, super common thing in all of the practices. It's incredibly important to the Vedics and to the Greeks. And we see it coming up again and again in even the more northern cultures. But I do want to make sure that people understand that this is all based on language and how that language is traced through time based on what we currently know. And that changes occasionally as we discover more. But I know there are people out there that are like, there was this great big Indo-European culture and it just spread all over the world. And maybe, but I don't know. I don't know. I can't tell you. There are enough differences between the different cultures that makes me think that it wasn't one big monolithic culture. But it was more like people expanding through the world, taking their beliefs and incorporating it with the lands that they came into and the cultures that they met, and sort of pulling things together. We see the Greeks doing it a lot. Let's conquer this place. Hey, suddenly ISIS. Let's worship ISIS. Woo!
Exactly. That's part of the fun of the Greeks. You work with the Greeks and you work with everybody.
Well, they did try to take over a bunch of Gaulish gods, so yeah, there's that.
I think the commerce really drove a lot of that.
Yeah.
The Mediterranean is a big place and it's a small place, and just trading brought wonderful things like wine to different cultures, and also brought other vestiges of that culture, like their gods. So it's commerce and belief. Interesting combination of things.
Yeah, we have stories of Odin loving red wine and drinking nothing but red wine. That's all he consumed. How is red wine getting to Scandinavia? Like, it's too cold to grow grapes.
Come to Gaul. Come to Gaul.
Yeah, trade's the only way to do it.
And I think that my theory is that in those cultures, they were already polytheistic practices that they were holding. So it's really easy, if you're a polytheist, to see another deity and be like, hey, I like that one too, and to adopt it and to incorporate those into your practices. Then you see in later, when there are monotheistic practices in place, suddenly those beliefs are conflicting with what you believe. So I think that's what helped some of the spread of cultures like Greece and
But yeah, no, I'm always fascinated when I see new things come out. And there's the moment where I'm like, I told you so, to the, sort of in my head. I didn't actually tell anybody this, but in my head, I'm like, when they discovered that maybe some of those Vikings buried with swords were actually women. Shocking. And things like that. It is just sort of fascinating on the filters that we view things through. Right now that we're getting a more diverse set of scientists and anthropologists and sociologists who are actually looking at all of this stuff, we're starting to tease out more information, because you've got people with different viewpoints coming in and looking at things in different ways, because there are different cultures and different histories.
And there are new things being discovered all the time. And if you look at some of the Hittite discoveries, they're a little over 100 years old. They're relatively recent. And, we always, I think, for myself as a polytheist, I think, oh my goodness, we've lost so many things. But I'm also hopeful that we'll find some of those things along the way through science and through magic and through luck.
Well, and I think that the advent of things like the internet are a massive help with that. I mean, it used to be that someone would discover something and it would get put in a book, and the book would get put in, a library in one place, and that's essentially where the knowledge would go to die. And so when you have things like the internet available, it allows people to share what they're learning and to connect with people halfway across the world that are exploring those same ideas, and help build an understanding, I think, a little bit easier than we could have, even 50 years ago.
Right.
Yeah. And in lately, there's been this, for obvious reasons, for folks who are watching this or listening to this much later, we are recording this in July of 2020. So you can put context around some of our comments. But right now there's this huge rise in festivals. And so you have festivals where normally you would go to a festival and it would be mostly folks that are relatively local with maybe a couple of big names from other places. But now you're getting a whole host of people from all over the world being able to just log in, because they're all online and you're all zooming in or filming from wherever you are and pitching in, and the audience is from everywhere, the presenters are from everywhere, and I'm seeing such a wide range of stuff. And also I'm able to get to them because I don't actually have to fly or put myself up in a hotel anywhere. All I have to do is say, hey, I'm busy this weekend. I'm going to sit in front of my computer and watch an online conference.
It is amazing. I just recently I went to a winter solstice rite in Melbourne, Australia, and then I went to a summer solstice rite in Chicago, Illinois, all from from sitting in this chair. Yeah. So it's a wonderful thing.
It's going to be really, really interesting to see how much of this continues. I hope it does.
Me too. I hope a lot. It makes it so much more accessible, and it makes what we do so much more global. because there's access to it, and I love to learn from what other people do, and looking at what they do, no matter where they are, it's like, wow, I wish I could do that, or wow, I will do that.
It's
Well, there's a
fascinating.
whole new level of connection that you can do in this type of setting. I can see your face, I can read your expression. You can see me gesture with my hands way too much because that's what I do. You don't see any of that in email. You can't feel the passion. You can't pick up the sarcasm. And so I agree. I really hope that stuff like this continues even once we're able to leave our houses and do things.
I do miss hanging out with people, though. Festivals are still fun.
I'm hanging out with people right now. The two of you. It's wonderful.
That's true, but it's a little bit more fun when we're all in person with our mugs of tea and, little cookies, and the random cat or dog walks by.
It's true.
But it is kind of exciting that, at this point we're in two different countries, 3 different locations completely. We're in different time zones, and yet we're able to get together and have these conversations, which wouldn't ever happen weekly or bi-weekly or whatever in person.
Yeah, which is pretty cool.
It is amazing. It's a gift of the gods. And technology, of course.
Well, yes. It is definitely a gift of technology. All right. Do we have anything else we wanted to cover today?
I don't think so. I mean, it's nice to hear everybody share, and while some of the stories may not be new to the 3 of us, I think they may be new to other people. And it's really interesting for me to hear how both of you came to paganism and to Druidry, and I think it's a common experience for a lot of people. So great stuff. Thank you.
Do we want to maybe end the episode with a divination?
Sure.
All right, so let's see. I'm using the Greek alphabet oracle is my go-to method of divination. Tends to be a tricky friend sometimes. But we start with pi. Pi essentially is a message of perseverance and ongoing. And then we have Kappa. Kappa, again, is a message of endurance. And let's see, what do we end here? We have Alpha. Alpha means success in everything. Good job. So essentially our message is persevere, keep going, you're doing a good job. I think that's a pretty good way to end the first podcast.
I think that is. All right. Well, it was great chatting with everyone, and we will see you again in a few weeks.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you for joining us today. If you like this video, give us a thumbs up or subscribe for more videos in the future. You can also find us on Facebook or our website, triskelepodcast.weebly.com.